CNN recently had Ana Kasparian of TYT on a panel, wide-ranging discussions, but in particular on Israel. She just absolutely cooked them. And there was a moment that really stood out, Saagar, where she brings up this situation that we've been covering, and we're going to continue to cover actually in the next block, of this Israeli alleged pedophile caught up in an FBI sting in Las Vegas, who was allowed to post bail and flee the country, who happens to not just be any old Israeli, by the way, top aide to Netanyahu. She brings this up on the panel, and there's just basically like silence, and then they change the subject. Let's take a look at that.
The problem with Trump, though, is I think crime is the cover story. I think this is a power grab. And the reason why I say that is because look at the specific examples of crime that he allegedly wants to go after. I mean, just recently, his FBI did a sting operation in Las Vegas, and they managed to catch, through this sting operation, 8 separate pedophiles that were trying to have sex with minors, okay? One of those pedophiles is an Israeli government official who his government allowed to fly back to Israel after he had been charged in that sting operation for using technology to lure a minor for sex. And when it comes to the immigration issue, he loves to go after the undocumented immigrants, but not the employers employing the undocumented immigrants.
You mentioned that Trump, you described it as a cover story, but I think it's also worth noting.
Oh. And then Abby Phillips just picks up on the immigration point and moves on. And Saagar, I don't know how much you've watched this show. I haven't watched it a lot. No, but these panels are famous for, like, you know, they're meant to be kind of a melee, the crosstalk, and they're jumping on each other and whatever. I love how she says this and everyone's just completely silent. Scott Jennings is just sitting there stone-faced. I'm quite sure it is the first time it has ever been mentioned on CNN since 100%. The story broke.
I know that it has. Yeah. And in fact, you know, I mean, you know, when you're in this job, one of the fun things is that I talk to some of these people behind the scenes. They all know that it's messed up. They want to cover it. In fact, many of them congratulated me and us on all of our reporting around the subject. And I was like, thanks, but, you know, when are you going to cover it? I was like, I'm just, you know, a YouTube guy. Silence, nothing. They know, all right? I mean, I don't know if the order has come from the top or whatever, but this is, very, like you said, the very first mention of it on their air, I believe. It's clear Jennings and, you know, what's the guy's name, Kevin O'Leary and all that, they either had heard about it and they're totally shutting up, or they'd never heard about it before. Both are indictments, actually, if you ask me. Same with the overall news panel. And it's one of those where, guys, I mean, this is a genuine story. It's actually a scandal, the fact that he hasn't been returned. We'll get to it in a little bit and give everybody an update. But I thought that broadly, I mean, look, props to her for it going on, because that is like the only way that their viewers would ever even be exposed to this type of information. Because one thing you can say at the very least, look, the internet, we've done a lot, almost an hour now on the show about all the problems with that. But one thing I generally appreciate, at the very least, people who watch the show or others, you're going to get exposed to a lot of information. You are going to get exposed to from not just both sides, but like even in general, if you're on Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever, wherever you are, like your information diet is such that you probably had heard about this or you had some sort of inkling. But that's just so not the case with the Fox News, the CNN, or the MSNBC viewer. And that's why, you know, having people like Anna on, or at least in this particular case, like that view just never gets represented. Otherwise, you're just going to get these shibboleth, you know, mantras and be like, but what about the hostages? What about the hostages? Or, you know, Israel has a right to defend itself and a right to exist. And you're like, bro, what are we doing here? Like, it's not October 28th, 2023.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I love when they have her on. She's really excellent on these panels. They've had her on a few times, and she's just so effective in the way she communicates. And she's clear. She's so fierce when it comes to Israel and just does not pull any punches. And to your point about, you know, the internet, which is both, you know, incredible promise and incredible peril, I guess is sort of the theme of this show today. This story would never have seen the light of day in a pre-online media environment. This is a purely like internet, independent media, or like non-traditional media, I guess we'll say, story that got picked up on, and all the reporting that has been, I shouldn't say all, there's been some local news reporting, but you know, the most of the reporting has been like you and Village Crazy Lady, the Twitter account online, you know, and otherwise this would have been just completely vanished and disappeared. Instead, it really is an international scandal. I mean, Netanyahu's had to address it. You've had Trump administration officials who have had to address it. And CNN, there's now enough sort of there's enough problems with the mainstream press, and they can see their ratings decline, and they see the writing on the wall, that they feel like they have to bring on some figures like Ana onto their panels just to maintain any sort of relevance and competitive, ability in the marketplace. And so these things start to seep in to the conversation there in a way that they never would have in a different era. So there's another moment here that I want to play for you where Anna's going back and forth with Scott Jennings about the, man-made, the Israeli-imposed famine in the Gaza Strip. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
Why are they holding the
What is your
hostages?
view about this? Because this is a talking point that comes up a lot.
It's not a talking point. There are 50 lives down there.
Hold on a second,
It is
Scott.
definitely a talking point.
Hold on a
When you
second.
block humanitarian into the
to-
Gaza Strip for
They're
3
not
months
blocking
straight,
any.
it not only impacts the Palestinians, which I know you couldn't care less about, but it also obviously is going to impact the hostages. They're going to starve to death as well.
You're
Hamas
saying Israel
is-
is starving the hostages?
I'm saying, yes, yeah. When you block humanitarian aid for
Just give
3
me 1
months,
second.
where do you think they're going to get
Max,
the food from?
Max, Israel
What a joke.
and Hamas have been...
Why
Can I
is
just
Israel
absolutely-
annexing the West Bank right now? Why is Israel annexing the West Bank? Which, of course, is not governed by Hamas at all. Why are Israeli settlers allowed to just run Palestinians out of their legal homes, build thousands of illegal settlements? West Bank has nothing to do with Hamas. Why is Israel annexing it?
Why-
did Netanyahu say that his stated goal in an interview with I-24 News, an Israeli publication, say that he has a religious need to pursue the greater
Okay,
Israel
I'm going to let
project?
Scott answer quickly, and then we've got to go. Go ahead,
Go
Scott.
ahead, Scott.
My view is this. The hostages have been there for almost 700 days. There's a reason that Hamas has not
Are you
released
going to answer
them.
her question, though?
I don't
He's
know.
not.
I don't
He's not
work for
gonna
the Israeli
answer.
government. All I really
Well,
care about is that the hostages
okay.
come home. And I have no belief that Hamas, that took the hostages, that murdered all these people, are ever going to let
All
them
right.
go unless they're totally eradicated.
We do have
Except
to leave
they
it
have
there.
let them
Max
go
Boot,
during
thank you.
ceasefire.
Man, Anna just cooked his ass in both those exchanges. And,
Yeah. Oh, don't
and
work
again,
for the
Saagar-
Israeli government, brother. You got a lot of connections there, though. You remember during the Iran war, whenever you were down there in an Israeli bunker, you can ask them if you want to. You got your little pin on. You're in the system. You could call them up.
Are you sure? Are you
Yeah.
sure you're not working for the Israeli
actually, that's
government?
a good
Because if
question.
you're not,
Very
then
possible.
maybe you should be collecting
Yeah.
a check because you're certainly doing the dirty work for them. But again, having her there, those are points that very few other CNN guests would be, I'm not going to say none, but very few
That's right.
would be willing to make. And he just tries to laugh off this idea. Oh, what, you think Israel's starving the hostages? LOL. It's like, of course they are. Of course. It's been so clear. It's really been clear from the beginning, but it's been undeniably clear for months at this point that Netanyahu and his government, they don't care at all about the hostages. In fact, the hostages are a problem for them because, when they come back and, when they are brought back alive, then they're able to speak about how they were terrified that they were going to be bombed and murdered by their own government. So no, they don't give a shit about the hostages. They know they're starving the hostages. Of course they are. When you blockade the whole Gaza Strip, that includes the hostages that are being held there. So it's amazing to watch him have to even grapple with that point, not to mention the point about the West Bank. It's like, okay, well, if this is all about Hamas, and I think this is a really important point that needs to be made more often, if this is just all about Hamas being bad guys, tell me about the West Bank. Tell me about why they are going forward with this aggressive, illegal settlement plan. Tell me why all of these, violent settlers are attacking and murdering Palestinians in the West Bank with the backing of the IDF, with the backing of the government. Tell me about that. Tell me how that has anything to do with Hamas. Because when you put all of those pieces together, not to mention the whole greater Israel and the attacks on all of their surrounding neighbors by and large, then you start to see the bigger picture and the broader plan. And you can no longer stick to your dumb ass talking points about like Hamas and the hostages, because we are so far beyond that holding any water if you actually have the facts at your disposal.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.